Elliot Johnson, my friend, you assured me yesterday that they got this after Francisco Lindor made it 8-7. I could spend an hour just talking about the last two innings of the first game of the doubleheader yesterday, but I'll just lead you into this because you've been touting him really for the last 2 months. Francisco Lindor is not going to be the most valuable player. I mean, that's going to be Shohei Ohtani. But what did he show you? What did he basically put a stamp on in the ninth inning with his two-run home run that restored the Mets' lead?
Well, and also he was almost casual about it, Adam. I mean, it was interesting. Like, really, it was the biggest swing of his life. Let's be real. I mean, because without that, there's no guarantees that they win game two. And I realize things would have, always going to be different. But I mean, it was just like a casual swing, and really, it seemed like in some ways, based on his reaction, that he didn't think he got all of it. But then you watch the replay and the way he had his head down, he knew he got all of it.
Yep.
And it just goes to show what he expects out of himself. I'll tell you, Adam, if I hit a home run like that to put us in the position to get into the playoffs, I would have been a little bit more and to put it lightly.
Would there have been a bat flip?
No, I'm not much of a bat flip kind of guy, man. Really, I'll make it simple for your viewers, your listeners. I don't want the next guy to get drilled because that's
Right.
like the worst that you could be. So you can imagine if you're having a great career or a great season and you're basically leading into a potential extension and you get dosed in the hand and break your hand and all of a sudden those talks, they kind of die on the vine and you never recover. I played with a guy named Fernando Perez who was an amazing baseball player that dove for a ball and fractured his hand and he never made it back to the big leagues, Adam. So I don't take any of that stuff for granted. So I'm not a bat flip guy for the sake of my teammates around me.
Elliot Johnson joining us here on the Adam Gold Show. Look, I've seen a lot of crazy things in baseball, but I saw one thing that I had never seen before. I'd seen comebacks before, and we'll get to that. I saw a ball that was that spun in such a weird way that it went from like 10 feet foul to fair. That ended up being beaten out for, I don't know if you saw the play. I think it was Tyrone Taylor for the Mets, a guy I'd never heard of until like 3 weeks ago, ever heard of him. And but he basically just got a piece to stay alive, but there was so much spin, it was off the end of the bat, and he actually tore the stitching of the ball that it spun back into fair territory, and then he ended up beating. This is why you run right away. I guess you never know. But he ended up beating it out for an infield hit. I'd never seen that. You ever seen anything like that?
Yeah, I've done it before. So it actually ends up spinning so much that it corrects itself and comes back fair.
Yeah.
Because your bat is swinging one way and you hit it off the bat the other. But I've actually had one hit the base and go into the outfield and end up being an extra bases, Adam. So like you play long enough, you'll see those things. We called it cueing it. So
Yeah.
just like Adam, it's a pool cue. So if you can cue it and get lucky enough to put it in play, it can end up being like a really strategic bunt. But that's why you run it out. Contrast that with Carlos Correa, who did not run a ball out coming down to the wire there, and throw ended up being errant. He ended up being out. That's why that's why it's enjoyable to watch like Mike Trout run down the line.
Mm-hmm.
Really Rocco Baldelli, playing with him, Adam, former Durham Bull. He was a guy that always ran everything out. So it would be nice if that culture kind of got instituted a little bit more. But you're talking to a guy that never hit multiple or double-digit home runs a year, so I was always running everything out at him.
Elliot Johnson is joining us here. How do you deal with a pitcher that doesn't cover first base when it would have been the third out of the bottom of the eighth inning? How do you deal with that? Because Edwin Diaz could have escaped the eighth without any run scoring from Atlanta, except that, I don't know. He was just, it was a great play, great glove by Pete Alonso, and then he got up and he went, like, where are you? He wasn't there. So 4 runs scored after that mistake.
So just like every position player, Adam, I hate pitchers. And, pitchers are in some ways so selfish and they don't really think about anybody else other than themselves. you should be conditioned at this point that anything that's on the right side, you initially have a
Right.
reaction to go over there. And if you need to like, ideally you go hard up front. Like Ken Griffey Jr. back in the day, everyone used to say he goes hard at the beginning so you don't see him go hard at the end. Your initial reaction is always to get over there right away, and then if you need to slow it down, you slow it down. But if you have to speed it back up, it's a bad play. So because he's so important to the team, Adam, the way that it needs to be addressed is, hey, make sure you're getting over real quick, and then the off season you really get into him. But you don't do it right now because you don't really want that kind of trickling into his next opportunity. Okay.
Well, maybe it was egregious, and all I could think of was they're going to now blow this, and they'll figure out some way to lose game 2 of the doubleheader. But Diaz, after blowing it, did ultimately buck up and get out of a jam in the 9th inning when I think Carlos Mendoza wanted to take him out, and Diaz like, no, I got this. Of course, the Mets have a game later today against the Brewers, team they've really had trouble figuring out this season. Before I get to any other games, and who knows how much time we have anyway, Elliot Johnson is joining us here on the Adam Gold Show. And the Braves won game 2 of the doubleheader, there's an issue about, well, let me get to this first. Major League Baseball. They did a disservice to the Arizona Diamondbacks, I think. As much as I was glad that the Mets got in, it should have been no more than a 1-game deal because Major League Baseball should have forced the Braves and Mets to play Monday, which maybe they could get all 3 games of the series in and not have to have any games played Monday. But the Diamondbacks pretty much knew their fate. This doubleheader was always going to be split, and a split sent both the Mets and Braves in. So I think Major League Baseball needs to be a little bit more proactive. Am I crazy?
Okay, so if you're a Diamondbacks fan, here's what I'd say. If it were the Yankees, like what you just said would be on every sports talk everywhere, Adam.
Yes.
But because of the Diamondbacks, it's nowhere. So I'll give you credit for identifying how that is. However, here's the contrast. This is what is going to be said to the clubhouse. If you don't like it, play better, is the overwhelming statement that gets said to everyone. At some point in your career in the minor leagues, somebody's going to tell you, if you don't like it, play better. And really, they got put in a position where they didn't own their own destiny. So if you don't like it, you need to play better. I mean, they played terrible down the stretch.
They did.
Adam.
They blew a big lead to Milwaukee in a series they just played.
So there you go. So if you don't like it, if you don't want to be in a position where you don't own your own destiny, you need to win those games down the stretch. I mean, I don't know what you want to say. So they were in a position where they were in, and then they ended up playing their way out. So yes, you have a very good case to be made. If the fan base was stronger, we would be hearing about it nonstop. So I appreciate you giving them some currency because, I do like the Diamondbacks. I grew up in Arizona. I wish them well. Corbin Carroll's a great baseball player. But still, the Padres earned it in because they played so well in the second half and down the stretch. And the Diamondbacks, unfortunately, played their way out of it. You don't like it, play better.
I agree. I mean, as I was having a conversation about it today, I'm like, you could always say to Arizona, I'm sure there's a game somewhere that you should have won that you didn't win, and that's the difference. But ultimately, Major League Baseball, come on, this wasn't good for the Mets and the Braves either. By the way, they both get in, but this was not good for either of them because they had to play 2 games. And now they both have to get on a plane and play again tomorrow. Elliot Johnson is joining us here on the Adam Gold Show. Pete Rose passed away yesterday, age 83. You're not going to find a more complicated person than Pete Rose in sports. You're just not. I mean, he's morally bankrupt in many ways. He did damage to the integrity of the game with gambling on the Reds. Always to win, except when he didn't gamble on the Reds, which was a clear sign to people. But there's no question he was a Hall of Fame baseball player, and he actually was to me as a kid growing up. You were born when he was already with the Expos, but as a kid growing up, Pete Rose was baseball. He was the guy that everybody wanted to play like. How do you weigh Rose the player? Does he belong in the Hall of Fame, and Rose the person?
All right, so I want to kind of just more stay on the side of respect for Pete Rose, and my dad growing up, he raised me to be a switch hitter, obviously. So Pete was a guy that we always wanted to look to. I think Pete was the guy that embodied the what it meant to give everything you got every single
Yep.
day and win no matter what. Under any under no exception do you not give less than 100%. Ruining a guy's career for blocking the plate in an all-star game, if that doesn't tell you roses, I don't know what will,
Right.
because guys end up just mailing it in and they don't want to get hurt. Well, Pete, not only did he potentially, obviously he ended his career, but Pete potentially could have broken his arm, his shoulder, his leg, his collarbone, whatever it was. So I'm going to stay on the side of respecting his legacy for what he meant to the game as a ball player, for being the hit king, and for doing everything that was good about watching the game. And if you paid your hard-earned money to go watch
Hmm.
somebody play, he never took any pitch for granted, Adam. And I think that type of ball player, there's always room for that guy on a baseball team, because when you look at him when he was doing his little hit analysis with Frank Thomas and A-Rod, like, Pete is not a big guy at
Mm-mm.
all, Adam. And one of the things that you certainly respect a guy that has 4,000 hits is not letting that bother him and being amongst guys that are 6'5" plus. Frank Thomas is a mountain of a man, Adam. For him to be in that situation, not be intimidated whatsoever, speaks volumes for the type of guy he was, that he didn't let anyone overwhelm or intimidate him. He was going to go out there and play his game and never give the opposition a single ounce of any credibility or respect or whatever you want to call it over him, that he owned his part of the game. And I think there's a lot that we can learn, not just in baseball, but in life, from that particular kind of man.
So you're a switch hitter as a kid, and I'm in no way trying to pretend that I was a baseball player on the level of Elliot Johnson, but I taught myself how to be a switch hitter because when we played stickball on the side of the house, we all tried to emulate maybe not our favorite players, but we would be a team, and you'd have to emulate that lineup. And I taught myself how to be a switch hitter in many ways, many respects, because Pete Rose. So it was an ugly looking stance, but it worked for him, which is maybe why I was a singles hitter from the left side of the plate. But we all tried to play like him. I mean, that was it. You play whatever position is needed. He was an all-star at 4 different positions: second, left, third, and first. He's a World Series champion many times over. He just played hard all the time. So you and I completely concur on all of that stuff. And again, I separate the other stuff. He should be in the Hall of Fame, yes?
I think so.
Yeah, should be in the Hall of Fame. All right. Most dangerous team, not Yankees or I guess Indians. Most dangerous team, not Yankees in the American League, is the Cleveland Indians, correct? Or do you give the Tigers now a little bit of run? Or maybe even your Astros? I just said your Astros. That's right.
Cleveland looks pretty good, man. If they can get the ball to Clase, they pretty much win.
Okay.
I think Detroit has nothing to lose, Adam, and they're dangerous.
Yeah.
Nothing to lose. Scooble is the Triple Crown for the pitching. I think Sale in the National League Triple Crown.
Yeah.
So they're dangerous from that standpoint, where they've got nothing to lose. They're playing hot right now. They're playing loose. Not only that, their manager used to be with the Astros, so they've got plenty of tricks up their sleeve in the event that they prepare the right way, and I think they will. So I think I are in a really good position. It would make me so happy to beat the Astros, of course, with or without. But the Tigers have some young guys on there that are playing almost incapable of comprehending how big it is, the
Right.
moment that. So I would love for the Tigers, of course, to win. No matter who was in the 6th seed, I would want them to win. But the Tigers are really interesting. I'm looking forward to them. I don't know if they have enough to beat the Astros or really the Guardians for that matter. But I love watching what the Tigers are doing. And then, of course, the Padres in the National League. They're so hot right now. They have so much confidence. They don't think anybody can beat them. But they're going to have to beat the Braves, and then we'll see if they can beat the Dodgers, because the Dodgers are always the Goliath every single year.
I would love to see the. If it's not the Mets, I would love to see the Padres. A Padres Tigers 1984, the year that we got Elliot Johnson. 1984. It would be great to see those two teams meet again in the World Series. Elliot Johnson, my friend, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much. We'll talk soon.
Pleasure as always, Adam.